Tom.
I'm Bryce.
Kevin.
And our mentors, I don't believe they're here today, but our mentors were Will, Robert, and Josh. So we have the next slide. So first off, of course, a little background for our project. So Pedigree is a IoT company. They have the project we're working on is they have a lot of different fleet vehicles. As you see up here, they have a ton of different engines out on the field. And basically, what they wanted was a way to troubleshoot and diagnose their engines out in the field. If something were to break down or in the garage or whatever, they needed a way to be able to see anything that's happening within any of their assets and be able to track that and have that data localized somewhere. So their solution is, or the solution they wanted us to implement was a mobile equipment. Well, it's part of their mobile equipment dashboard. It's a mobile diagnostic engine tool. So basically what's going on here is they have these devices already created. They handed us all these to test with our own software, and these devices go into your car in the standard diagnostic port, and what happens is that device reads all the data that's coming out of your car, every single metric you could imagine, such as like gas life, RPM, speed, odometer, the list goes on. And so that device reads the data, and then it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and then that's where you can look at your phone and see everything that's going on. So in real time, a driver can, press the gas pedal, see what happens when the RPM goes up. Oh, the oil temperature drops dramatically, or something like that. They can see in real time what's going on within their vehicle. So, the next slide. So like I said, that's the proposed solution they wanted from us. They wanted some graphical way to be able to cleanly and easily see what's going on with any aspect of their vehicle. And this is useful for any vehicle as long as it has that diagnostic port. So these are just some mock-ups they handed us. We strayed from this, but that was just like the very general idea they basically wanted. And so from here we'll go into talk about our app specifically and what we made it look like and some features we added.
So as you can see, the old design was more monochromatic. It was just blue and white. Everything was a little bit harder to read. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
This was the old design that was actually handed to us, so we are the second capstone team to actually work on this project. So at the end of the last capstone, this was their final result, and so we've been building off of it and making quite a bit of changes.
So for Sprint 1, we kind of just familiarized ourselves with the Android Studio and the GUI. For Sprint 2, we started to make some real changes to the project and added a menu hamburger button, a switch between graph and gauge view, and started to research the CSV file. And then for Sprint 3, we kind of finished the GUI and then did some more gauge and graph updates, as well as a home screen update. And then for Sprint 4, we finished the gauges and graphs, finished the CSV, did some more bug fixes, and added metrics to the menu.
So for our progress so far, I personally was working on this side menu. Basically, we were trying to replace the current selection menu with a more simple just hamburger menu that would pop out. You can make changes at any time. So I was able to finish just implementing the menu itself. I got the correct metrics to display. I added select all, select none buttons. And when you select the correct metrics, there's a little slider switch, and I got all of that to work.
And this will make more sense when you see our app in a second with the demo. But it's a typical, every app nowadays uses this side menu that Bryce is working on.
Yep.
But carry on.
For the gauges, we finished up the gauges 100%. Everything's been implemented. All the user stories and everything that Pedigree wanted has been implemented into the gauges. We have improved the overall look, the readability of it. We've added a bunch of features, which we'll cover more in depth once we actually do the demo.
Similar with the graphs, everything's been finished, and it was mostly design and a little bit of functionality change. And yeah, we'll talk more about it later.
Yeah, and one final stretch goal they asked for, so they wanted to be able to export all the session data to a CSV so then they can upload that to their servers and then, do whatever sort of parsing they want, do any sort of trend finding with that. And so I worked on the CSV export. So after your session's done, you're reading all the data, and then when you hit export CSV, everything you've looked at so far is then, quite obviously put into a CSV file format. And once again, we're going to show all this off in the demo in just a moment here. So
Which leads us to the demo.
All right.
All right. Typically for our demo, we would use an engine simulator, but we're not going to be using that today. We're just going to be using some test data that we have implemented into the app. For our midterm presentation, we used the simulator and we used the dot cam, and it didn't show up very well. So we figured we would just use some test data so we can actually get a clear image of our working app this time.
Right, so like Kevin was saying, right here is where, this just says test device, but if you were within range of a Bluetooth device that you were paired up with, you would have a list of different devices here with all your paired devices. So because, like he said, we're not using our simulator because it didn't show up on the screen very well last time, we'll just use some test data that just feeds in, just like the same way it would with the actual engine. So, test device, yeah, we'll just go ahead and select all of them. So this is a list, so this is like, not every engine will have all these metrics because I don't know why, just it's what the engine's set up to display. But this is all the possible, if an engine did have everything, it'd be this. So that's everything. We'll go ahead and hit go. Yeah, all right.
And then, okay, so on the front, on this screen, as you can see all the different metrics. We have the engine RPM, we have the diesel level, we have speed and all these other things. And then towards the bottom, if we scroll down,
Emulator's a little buggy. It's different on our final.
Come on. We have the text-based metrics near the bottom, and these text-based metrics are things that don't have a max or a min. So the miles you're doing in your car doesn't have a max or min. There's no reason to put that in a gauge or a graph. So those are displayed at the bottom. One thing Pedigree wanted, they wanted if we would rotate the screen, it would display 3 gauges. They do increase in size a little bit, which might make it easier to read, but this is what Pedigree wanted. Same thing. These are displayed on the bottom. Just rotate it back. Wrong way. We added a little button up top. This switches from our gauge to the graph. You can also just side swipe, which brings this to the graphs.
I'll real quick point out, Kevin played with a lot of different designs on the gauges, so we tried different coloring schemes, we tried different backgrounds, different ways to define one gauge from another, and I think we're all really pleased with how it turned out because now it's very clear, but it still looks good. It looked kind of cartoony when it was colory, so the clear defined edges are really what make those gauges better than the ones that we were handed off, those blue weird arcs. So you go ahead and select your graphs now.
And for the graphs, everything was just made kind of clearer and sharper. We changed it so that each graph is a separate color depending on the metric. Also, some of the Y values were rounded. There was some X value smoothing going on because initially it was a little bit jerky. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
On the original design, they were actually missing the Y values. They only had a max and min, so they actually didn't have any values in between. So like this one, it goes from 0, 30, 60, 90. On theirs, they'd have 0 to like 92 or some random value, and it didn't, it wasn't very helpful having 0 to 92.
And we don't have our old app to show off, but this is incredibly smoother than it was. Before it was extremely jagged, it would update every half second but this is smoothly rolling along, so we did, we're pretty pleased with our work on this as well, with our graphs. So yeah, I can talk about the CSV export now. So like we mentioned before, this hamburger menu, Bryce made, and so when you're done with your session, if you just hit upload CSV, you get a little, exporting CSV message there. And so through Android Studio, it's, in this file structure, I don't need to talk about that. I can quick, well, it's already pulled up, I guess. All right. And so there, now it exports via, so each, this is from it would have all the apps. This is from our export from before, which we only have 4 metrics on this one because this is from right before when we exported one. But basically, it's just a data value followed by the time point. And so for our final presentation here, we do have some tweaks to this format that we didn't quite push for the master, just so we didn't break anything. So this is going to be in a slightly different format, but the same data is still there regardless. The same idea is still here. And so it's a huge list, but it's parsable and it has all these different, like, it does not take long to fill up a lot of data on this file. And so the thing we didn't quite get to because, well, just other things are more important, they were looking to have the CSV file automatically uploaded to their servers. And so we didn't really play around with any sort of like, security and connection stuff like that. We figured that'd be pretty easy for them to just, add that functionality, which they agreed. We'd rather focus on the design and the looks of it. So, but just for future reference, the stretch goal was to be able to have this exported to their servers directly. Right now, it's just saved on the device itself on the internal storage. But that is a general idea. Do we have anything else to show off on that? Oh, that's right. Yeah, my bad.
So I mostly worked on the slide menu here. The one that's displayed here is not the most recent. I didn't want to push my changes just because not everything's completed and I didn't want anything else to break. But we're able to click this button and we're also able to just slide the menu over. But I have some, let's see. I just took some screenshots here. So the view on the left, that's what I essentially was trying to replace. I was trying to take all of those metrics that you could select and place them inside the menu, totally getting rid of that activity. So just, I guess, starting from the top, working down, I added a basic add preset button. At the moment, it doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, when I select it, it pops up this this keyboard, and then for whatever reason, it adds a preset to the very bottom, which that would be something I would have to work out. And then I would obviously just have the user be able to change the title of that menu item, and then I added the select all button, and that works. When you select it, it just displays everything, and then as with the select none, that just takes away everything. There's a slight bug with this select all. For some reason, I think it deals with the gauges. I just came across it last night, so I haven't had a lot of time to look into it. And then there's the delete preset that just deletes the preset that you made. It'll delete the topmost preset. And then there's the actual metric selection. So you can go through and select or deselect any of the metrics. And then since I couldn't figure out a good way to have those just open up in the background, like as you're selecting them, I just set it so that when you close the menu, then all of the metrics that you selected will display. So that is the way it currently works. And then Adam showed the download CSV, which works as well.
So basically our general idea with this was, you saw during our demo at the beginning of the app, you open it up and you select all your metrics and then you're going, your session started. And so what we wanted to do ideally was, so in that case, you'd have to, if you want to look at different metrics, you'd have to exit out of the app, restart it, reconnect, relook at, select different metrics you want. Our idea was to just be able to make in one menu, not have to go to a different activity, have different metrics, and then also be able to save those in different presets. So if you wanted to, for example, if you wanted to only compare RPMs to speed for some reason, well, then you just save an RPM and speed preset, you name it, whatever you want, and then it's there within the list. So that's basically the idea with this menu. We wanted to keep it into one activity versus restarting the whole app, and that's just for a user flow thing. So that's our goal here.
We had a bunch of issues and risks. Initially, we were all unfamiliar with Android Studio. None of us have really worked with Android Studio before, so there was a huge learning curve there, and that kind of set us back for a little bit. We got to, watch videos, tutorials, figure everything out. We got handed this application that had 9,000 lines of code. We didn't really understand it. We had to figure that out. We also had environment setup issues. Initially, when we'd set it up, we get a lot of build errors, and a lot of things just kind of went wrong right away. We figured that out. Another thing that kind of set us back, we didn't have the max or mins for the vehicle data. Well, we did, but we didn't actually realize we had it. It was kind of hidden in one of the files in the application. And then so when we met with Pedigree, they kind of informed us about that, and we were able to generate the gauges based off those mins and maxes. We had a Bluetooth during our midterm presentation. This simulator crashed a few times due to a Bluetooth connection error. That was actually, later we discovered that was actually my phone that was causing the issue. Because after our midterm presentation, my phone was crashing left and right with various things. And another risk we had was we were a little worried about the CSV export not being completed. Adam did get that finished, so that is no longer an issue for us. And then unable to complete the menu on time. That was another risk we had. We have the menu. The menu is a good chunk of the way done, but it still has a little bit of work, as Bryce has mentioned. And then the issues kind of lead into the risks. CSV is not complete. It's no longer an issue. That's been resolved. And the menu functionality is not completed, which I just talked about.
All right, so some things that went well. We pretty much finished the gauges, the graphs. We made those a lot more readable, a lot smoother. And then we actually managed to get the CSV working, and I believe we have it in the format that Pedigree wanted. Some things that didn't go as well, the menu. The menu is actually, typically it's used as like a navigational tool. So adding simple things like buttons and switches were kind of a pain. It seemed like everything required some kind of like roundabout way to get it to work. Even just adding the metrics, it took a long time just to get that transferred over and actually working properly. Also, because the menu is on an activity, and the gauges and the graphs are actually like fragments of that. Everything, like a lot of the changes that I made would touch the graphs and gauges, so I had to fix issues there when they would pop up. And then something that we would have done differently would be like starting the CSV a lot earlier. Didn't really start that until towards the end. I mean, some of it was just some research stuff, but and then more people working on the menu. So the menu was composed of several different parts. There was the presets, the actual metrics themselves. There was the CSV, and it would have been helpful to kind of divide that up a little bit more.
Right, like Bryce mentioned, one of our biggest issues is honestly that menu was way harder than we ever imagined it would be. The reason we assigned it to just one person was because we figured it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but like Bryce said, because it was a navigation menu, there was so many weird workarounds to get it to work, so it took a lot longer to get that functionality there. And it works without the menu. It's just a user flow thing. It's a lot quicker to be able to have those presets, to be able to not leave the app. So we figured, get the base functionality, get the look and feel done before that stuff, and then we'll move on to that when we can. So that was probably our biggest fallback, but we just didn't really know how hard it was going to be, essentially. So.
And then some things that were learned from doing this project, time management, that's a big one. We're all in a lot of the same classes, taking other classes, trying to finish up our degrees. And, so we had to, set aside time for meetings and set aside time for, actually working on the project. There was, usually at least one thing due every week. So, we had to make sure that we got those in on time, and everybody was, doing their part. And then a big thing for all of us, too, was actually having some experience with Android and mobile development. We didn't have a lot of experience with Android or just mobile development in general, so that was a big learning experience that we had. And then, of course, real world experience. We're working with a real company. Turning in. We're working on a project that will potentially be used by real customers, and we're filling out forms and things that would be used. So there's a lot of real world experience there, and I think it's really beneficial. And then recommendations for any future teams. I would say we underestimated quite a few things, so I would say overestimation is maybe a little bit better. I mean, obviously, if you way overestimate, then that could be bad. But there were certain things like the menu that we definitely underestimated, and then there was a few things that we also overestimated too. But and then a second thing would be just to start as soon as possible. There was I would say like the first 2 weeks, we didn't really do a lot of like actual like programming. A lot of it was just like learning Android Studio and just like setting things up. But it would have been kind of nicer to have actually just jumped into the code. Because I know for myself, I didn't actually use a lot of the stuff I learned in some of the tutorials. A lot of what I've learned was actually just from like trying and searching on the internet when I came across a problem.
So for potential future upgrades, Pedigree wants a section in the app that you can view error codes that your car gives out. So when you plug in the diagnostic tool, it'll send the error codes to your phone, and you can view those. Additional monitor parameters. So eventually, Pedigree wants to add more parameters to the application. Tablet support was one thing that they mentioned they want in the future. Our app works with some tablets, but some tablets it doesn't work quite so well, and the resolution gets changed drastically. Then everything gets skewed, and it just doesn't look correct. So that could be a thing for the future. And then exporting the CSV by email or sending it to the servers, whichever one Pedigree wants. And then finishing up the remaining tasks for the menu that weren't quite completed.
Yeah, any questions?
So reports wasn't on the last one, but you mentioned that was one of the things that maybe we're supposed to think about at the beginning. Are they not interested in reports anymore?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by reports?
Well, I thought you collect a lot of data.
Oh, the CSV report is probably what we were talking about. So that's just like a per session file is what they wanted.
Well, I was thinking they wanted to look at history of the truck.
See, they didn't really mention that.
Multiple times.
But I think that would be possible with the way we're naming our files, the schema and whatnot. I don't know if we ever really talked about that, but if you export it every time, then you do have a history of the session data. So, no, that's okay. There's just no like direct feature for that, but yeah, you could, in theory, do that for sure. Good question. Anybody else? All right. Well, we'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors. They were super helpful throughout the course of our project. They let us do our own thing, but they also had good feedback for us along the way. We learned a lot through this project with them. Other than that, I have nothing else to say. If you guys have anything else to add, I think we're good. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.